Hey everybody, it is Alexandra with Optimum Joy for another one of our therapist interviews, and I have Pete Marlow, therapist at Optimum Joy. And maybe as a way of introduction, Pete, will you just kind of catch us up to speed on the clients that you typically work with in therapy?
Yeah, typically I work a lot with college students, young professionals, couples. Yeah, those are kind of the main areas currently.
Mm-hmm. And our topic today that I'm actually very excited about,
Mm.
I don't know if people know this about me or not, but I have quite a bit of a feminist bent to me in my like core. I'm like, and our topic is toxic masculinity. And that to me falls under my feminist bent because I think that our society is kind of really terrible towards men.
Mm.
So we're going to be talking about toxic masculinity. It's something that you are also kind of like interested in and
Mm.
work with people over. So maybe if we just start, Pete, like bring people up to speed on what we'd even define as like toxic masculinity.
Yeah. So basically, toxic masculinity is just having a rigid definition of how a man should behave.
Mm,
That has a lot of different facets to it. First, there's like self-sufficiency. So basically, you're told to figure out your personal problems on your own. You always have to act tough, fighting back, and just never be scared of anything, or at least not show that you're scared, which is just terrible. Physical attractiveness. This is one you might not think of a lot, but it just says, guys who spend a lot of time grooming themselves around their looks aren't very manly. You should
mm.
just kind of like jump out of the shower and be done. Like that's good.
Like like
Yeah,
your
right.
natural essence is like manly. Yeah.
Yeah. Like rigid masculine gender roles. There's just certain things that men don't do, like for instance, like household chores or caring for young children.
Hmm.
There's, yeah,
Like
sorry.
when I think of household chores, I think women do the dishes and men take out the trash.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So heterosexuality and homophobia, self-explanatory. Hypersexuality, men should have as many partners as possible. And then the last one, which is still a big one, aggression and control. So the goal for men should be, according to this rigid definition, just to get control at all costs. That even means if it causes violence, or this is where like sexual assaults come into play and different things like that.
Hmm. This you bringing up all these points, I feel like is really painting a picture of like macho manhood. And what it's reminding
Mhm.
me of is I don't know if you've ever read any of Brene Brown's work,
Mm.
but in her book, I'm not gonna tell the story perfectly right, but
Mm.
she talks about the man who approached her when she only did shame research on women and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
what about the research on men?" And she's like, "Well, I don't
Hmm.
study men." And he basically said something along the lines of, "Well, isn't that convenient?" And mentioned that the women, because his wife and his daughter were back, I think, in the stage, or two women were with him, and he said something along the
Yeah.
lines of, "Those women would rather see me die on my white horse," or basically die being this like control, physically attractive macho man. They would rather see me
Hmm.
die on my white horse than have any sense of like vulnerability, which
Yeah.
isn't necessarily what we think of as masculine. And
Hmm.
that story has like burned itself into my brain.
Hmm.
And I guess my question after that is like, where do you think this came from, or how do you think it like came to be?
Mm.
Because I don't think it's just men who perpetuate it. I think it's a lot in culture.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think it's it comes from, like culture, probably, like it would have to come from um even just ancient texts, or just like, or literature.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's passed down from generation to generation, really.
Yeah.
You uh like it's so I was reading a book recently that was talking about, it was kind of focused on toxic masculinity in the evangelical church, but they discussed how like Theodore Roosevelt back in the early 1900s, he kind of grew up as a wealthy young man, and high society. And he was teased a lot as a kid. So he decided to go on kind of like this quest out west to find his manliness. And he, there he like did like stereotypical like manly things, like, you know,
Yeah.
rustled cattle and things like that. And he really ingrained that when he became president into the culture of our country. And people kind of saw him as, oh, okay, like he's the example, the bright shining example of who I should be. When really he had grown up as, like I said, very high society in New England.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. There's well, I want to get to, because I know that you were telling me about this like survey or this study, but
Okay.
I think that really, whenever we start talking about this, I actually start to think about the definition of misogyny, which we think of as a very feminist term, but some women in my life really taught me that misogyny is the devaluation of the feminine in us all, including men. And I think that a lot
Yeah.
of, we kind of sometimes can hear people joke about like the patriarchy, it's like, it's to
Sure.
blame for everything.
Right.
But I think in this conversation, how much maybe a more patriarchal culture, like you were saying, is generational in a way, but how both men and women sometimes feed into what it means to be masculine, what it means to be feminine, to the point where like we actually all have what we like. Sometimes people like I have masculine tendencies in like assertiveness, or some of those things that we think of as masculine, but men also have they have nurturing in them, which is a more feminine tendency. So whenever we kind of split those and devalue what we would kind of talk about as feminine, I think that's really where some toxic masculinity comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like with kind of jumping off a little bit what you said, like if I just thinking about in my own life, like if I had like my own dad kind of was a very good example to me of like embracing some of the more like feminine qualities. So but not everyone has that good example. So it's
Yeah.
just very, very painful. But
I think maybe that's where older male, not even older, but just like good male example, like seeing a man pursue this and be a different definition of what a man is, kind of like your dad was to you. Or I think sometimes what we see a lot of times is what a male therapist is to a male client. Actually, that they see a little bit of a modeling of what it looks like to be an emotional man, or a
yeah,
man who's connected with their emotions. And there's
yeah,
there's something to that, because it's so ingrained that almost I think the best way to learn is to see somebody else doing it and try to model after them, because that's like the main way
yeah,
humans learn anyways, right? Is through modeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So all you men
yeah.
out there who are combating toxic masculinity, keep doing it, because you're the
Yeah,
model to everybody else.
yep, for sure.
So this survey, the man box study that you were kind of
Mm-hmm.
sharing with me and stuff, tell me about what that is and kind of how that helps us think about toxic masculinity.
Yeah, so they did a big survey. It was in United States, Mexico, United Kingdom, so across multiple countries. But the U.S. statistics showed just some kind of startling statistics about how men view masculinity. So there were some of the, like, I guess I'll just cherry pick a couple of things.
Yeah.
So 59% said men should act tough even if they're scared or nervous. 23%, so almost 1 in 4, said that men should use violence to get respect if necessary.
Wow, when you
Yeah,
put it as 1 in 4, that seems so
yeah,
much greater than 23%. 23 is a big
mhm,
percentage, but 1 in 4.
right. I know. Yeah. So, let me see here. There's, um, another like kind of the controlling aspect. So 46%, that's almost 1 in 2. So men should be able to know where their partner is at all times. So your wife, your girlfriend, like you should have tabs on her. Um, yeah. 30%, man who talks about his worries, fears, or problems should not get respect, which just, that was the toughest one for me.
Even, with the partner one, I would imagine if we reverse that to say that women should
Mm,
know where men are, there would be like
Yeah.
a lower reporting on that,
Yeah.
actually.
I
So,
would suspect.
and like with this survey that came out, that obviously like that 1 in 4 men should use violence to get respect, that really actually is
Mhm.
pretty startling, but I think it actually shows how pervasive. And did you say that this was done in like a Western American culture? Because I think that culture does play a
Yeah.
lot into this.
It did, yeah, and the people who did the survey mentioned that. Obviously, it was
Hmm.
only done in a Western culture. Um,
Hmm.
mhm, yeah.
You know, so much of why I think sometimes why we talk about topics like this is because they are actually very, very important.
Mhm,
But you as a therapist who's also a man who sees people who work through some of this,
mhm.
really kind of whether from your clinical perspective or from research or experience, like why is actually spending time you and I on this, like talking about it, why is it even actually important?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons that men should take this seriously. And just personally, not just because they're, potentially having this rigid definition of masculinity affects just society around them, but it also affects them personally. Um, so obviously, like we know what a man thinks about masculinity is closely related to how he feels about himself. This was also in that study that I was talking about. They showed that the people who had less of a toxic view of masculinity had a higher life satisfaction. Um, so yeah, and if they're constantly being told to adhere to rigid masculinity, um, that means you're never being yourself. That's obviously harmful to mental health. You're basically hiding behind this facade of who you truly are, um,
Yeah.
and that can cause isolation because you're just not letting anyone in truly.
Hmm. Even that statistic you said about 59% of men,
Mm-hmm.
I think you said should act tough,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're like scared, makes me think of just what we know about like emotions, generally speaking, that if you stuff an emotion, it
Mm-hmm.
will like come out sideways. It'll manifest itself, usually symptomatically,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your mental and emotional health. So if almost 60% of men are not being congruent in a moment to what they're
Mm-hmm.
also experiencing, uh, that will come out sideways, in anxiety and depression in some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
Because congruence in a moment is something our brain, incongruence in a moment is something our brain actually registers as a threat or a challenge. And I always come back to that when I think of like us shooting on ourselves, like we should be something that we're not. And
Yeah.
if 60% of the time you're not allowing your scared or nervousness to be an okay thing, you're really
Yeah.
being incongruent with who you are. And that
Mm-hmm.
is actually like a threat to your brain. Your brain registers that as like this is not okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you're literally kind of tearing your brain apart. That's pretty significant.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, I guess like other reasons are that it's important are that you're less likely to have close friendships, which I
Hmm.
see from male clients all the time. It's something that they struggle with. Like, why don't I have close friends? I realize this. I'm in my 30s now, and don't have close friends.
Hmm.
You're also more likely to increase or to have increased risky behaviors. Um, it's not too much of a secret that men drive more risk, like have
Hmm.
drive more dangerously, and that also means substance abuse as well as another
Hmm.
risky behavior that can be elevated.
And something I think, risk taking behavior from a mental health perspective, generally speaking, is a way
Mhm.
to take care of probably underlying, um, like uncomfortable feelings too. It's like kind of a
Mhm.
way to self medicate and numb out a moment.
Yeah.
Is through, if we think about like alcohol, like if I'm sad, but I'm not allowed to be sad because I'm a
Mm.
man, that
Hmm.
actually I'm gonna avoid my sadness by drinking something,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna have an adrenaline rush from like driving really fast, or
Hmm.
I'm gonna avoid it by sleeping with as many sexual partners as I can. There's something to,
Hmm.
I think, and I don't think it's actually men's fault. I think our culture has perpetuated an environment where it's like men can't feel scared, men can't feel sad. So instead, they're just
Yeah.
trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
Um, but it sounds very lonely. It's tough enough being a woman, but I think it
Hmm.
is tough to be a man.
No, I agree. Yeah. It's just tough being human, but for different reasons.
That's true. That's very, very true. I received
Uh,
that critique.
no,
Um,
no critique.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, but honestly, like I think there's, I don't know, a couple other things that come to mind, like when I'm thinking about this topic. Like there's um, just our desire to compare ourselves to others, specifically relatives or other people in like media or in just the culture at large that we see who portray like that masculinity. And so then we just see them, everything's great. They seem like real men, what a real man's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't realize that, oh, they're struggling with the exact same vulnerabilities and fears that I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we're all longing for that affirmation. And
Exactly.
yeah.
This is what makes me excited, actually, Pete. I know that we probably you didn't plan on mentioning this, but I will make mention of it. This is what makes me
Sure.
excited about you starting a couple of like your smaller men's groups. You
Mhm.
know, just like with a few
Yeah.
like really 3 or 4 people who will like men who will just commit to kind of looking at this
Mhm.
as a way to increase their emotional capacity and coping and all that different stuff. I think because of
Yeah.
the isolation, the impact on friendships, the need for other men to see men model being a not toxic masculinity man,
Yep.
all of that makes me just really excited for the groups that you're starting at Optimum Joy. So
Yeah.
seems like a really
Yeah.
practical way to combat toxic masculinity.
Exactly. And I mean, it's kind of like, it's almost like a small crusade that I have is like, maybe the next generation can be less toxic in their like, yeah, masculinity.
I believe
Um,
it.
because then, hey, that's just going to perpetuate generation after generation. So,
And, this is not really the only reason to do this, but I
mhm.
think as our culture shifts in how it views women, women now, and this is speaking from a heterosexual perspective, partly because I'm heterosexual. So, like, I know that there are couples who don't follow maybe a heterosexual gender norm, but I notice maybe, and maybe we don't even have to say this heterosexually, but I notice that a lot of women who are heterosexual, who I know, actually want kind of a Renaissance man in the sense that they want their men to also
Mhm.
be um, emotionally in tune to themselves
Yeah.
and to their female partner, or just
Oh,
their partner generally speaking. So
yeah.
now I find that like at least a lot of my female friends who are looking for partners are kind of like
Hmm.
they want this emotionality or this in tune with kind of more of the feminine,
Hmm.
which is really kind of what we'd maybe supportive, nurturing,
Yep.
that they actually kind of want that in their partner now. So if
Yeah.
someone is thinking, "Oh, I like that's a good reason,"
Yeah.
how many times have women motivated men over the centuries? And women
Right.
want men who are a little more in tune with that and can even like
Yeah.
lead in that way or participate in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. Participate in that way because it's,
Participate, I like that. It takes
yeah,
away the leadership masculinity. Yeah,
egalitarian. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the biggest thing I think, and this is why I love a lot of Brene Brown's work around vulnerability, who,
Mhm.
I often am like, Brene, my friend, because I want her to be my friend. But yeah. But talk to me a little bit from your perspective as a man, why vulnerability is not the same as weakness, even though a lot of men define vulnerability as weakness.
Yeah. So obviously, men are taught to look within themselves for strength and have no needs. This is kind of like obviously, it's more specialized to Western culture. But yeah, like we're just supposed to kind of be an island unto
Mhm.
ourselves and just handle it all. But like I think I mentioned earlier, this just leads to isolation, overwhelming pressure. Like if you're not able to let anyone else in on this pressure that you're feeling, it's just going to continue to build.
Mhm.
And then that's going to lead to depression, further isolation, and because you don't want people to know that you're struggling with depression then at that point, because that's more
Yeah.
vulnerability. And yeah, um, but yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier about like suppressing emotions and the harm that has on a person,
Mhm.
because they obviously don't go away when we suppress them. Um,
No.
doesn't stamp them out. They just build and build.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, it also, we've mentioned sadness and depression, but it makes me think of anger as well, because we
Mhm.
kind of think of anger particularly as a male emotional experience. But,
Mhm.
it always makes me think of primary and secondary emotions,
Mhm.
because and I always get them mixed up. But regardless, one is protective of the softer underbelly, because I can never remember what's
Yeah.
primary and what's secondary.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you almost think of like a scab on a
Mhm.
wound, it's like that crusty kind of gnarly scab is actually anger, because
Yeah.
it doesn't let your wound get infected. It's a hard
Mhm.
crusty surface, so it can't get further injured.
Yep.
Like there's all kinds of biological benefits of that,
Mhm.
but it's like what's underneath. Anger always comes with like a scab always comes with a wound. Anger always comes with a softer emotion, which is like
Yeah.
hurt, sadness, disappointment, rejection, abandonment.
Mhm.
All of that kind of soft underbelly is really, and vulnerable means to like make something valuable, like to put it out in the open, essentially.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
to kind of like, almost you think of like a dog that trusts you rolls over so you can scratch their underbelly, but that's where
Mhm.
all your like soft vital organs are. So it's almost
Mhm.
like I trust you with like what
Mhm.
what could potentially make me die.
Yeah.
And I just think that anger is, in my experience, is a really common tool that men use to
Mhm.
protect. It's that scab that really commonly protects some of that soft underbelly, or that woundedness, that potential
Yep.
for hurt.
Yep. Yeah. Because when you get angry, people want to leave you alone.
Yeah, they back up.
Yeah.
They're kind of like,
Yep.
oh, that's big and scary. Like, I got to get away from that.
Mhm.
And then they end up
Mhm.
leaving the soft stuff alone.
Yeah. Yeah. But the more I think about it, the more about vulnerability, the more I just realize that it's truly strength. That's the true strength. Like being willing
Mhm.
to open yourself up to others, and it takes so much courage to do, and bravery. Like I can't think of anything more strong than that. So
Yeah.
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 Mm.
There's this, if you honestly Google a knight in rusty armor free PDF, you'll come up with
Yeah.
like a free PDF, and it's this like 40 to 50 page short story about
Mm.
a knight that gets stuck in his armor, or gets stuck in his like facade,
Yeah.
and how he like goes on a journey to remove it, because since he's stuck in this armor, he can't even like have a relationship with his wife and his child, so he
Mm.
like goes on this journey to remove it. And I actually always recommend that to my male clients, because I think it's such a beautiful picture of what it means to take a a, a a psychological journey to combat some of that. Like I need to
Yep.
appear to be something that I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a copy of it. So, what else? Anything else you'd like to say about how it's important or why it's important before we kind of move on in this conversation?
I think we can move on.
All right. How
Yeah.
does it show up, for you? I mean, you've mentioned isolation and like vulnerability and all this other
Mm.
stuff. Like, do you notice how it shows up in your work in therapy with
Mm.
men specifically?
Yeah. So I think it is that willingness to be vulnerable is the main way that I see it show up in therapy. It typically takes my male clients several sessions to truly open up, which is totally understandable when they've had the message their entire life that being vulnerable is weakness. And so I'm always shocked though when I do have male clients and they're just vulnerable right from the beginning. I'm like, wow. I always have to compliment them like on how great they're doing with vulnerability. Yeah, and every time that they are vulnerable, even if it takes them a few sessions, every time they are, and they kind of reflect on the fact, oh, I was just vulnerable. They always say, this feels great. Like I am so happy I did this. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
but um, and also like just um, yeah, I feel like a lot of times too it leads to issues with like understanding your values and your purpose in life and who you are. Just because again you're hiding behind this facade of rigid masculinity and what you've been told your whole life how you're supposed to
Mhm.
live and act and what you're supposed to value. And a lot of times I just see clients kind of wake up to the fact that they've been living a lie
Yeah.
and they're not sure who they are. Um, so But I mean, that's always, kind of fun for me to help people get to have that light bulb go off.
It's a scary thing for people to work through, but I
Yeah.
always am kind of, I got, whenever that comes up for me too, when working with clients, I always kind of like
Yeah.
laugh a little bit because I'm like, I am always like, I'm very excited for you. And they're like, I'm
Yeah.
in pain. And I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
very excited for you.
I
But it's
know.
really, and again, that's why I love that story, that A Night in Rusty Armor. Honestly, I might just like read it tonight again, is because you
Hmm.
see that something so painful, you see like the whole process all the way through, where it's
Hmm.
like isolation, pain, but you move through to like connection and humanity, and
Yeah.
purpose and all these different things. So
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to start taking a look at, like how anybody can really like live out as somebody else's expectations for our lives than our essence, who we actually truly are. And that's what
Hmm.
I think combating toxic masculinity gets at, is more of like who you truly are is allowable and actually like a really good and needed thing for the world.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody has some type of value they can share with the world. So
Absolutely. So,
excellent.
okay, Pete, bring us home with what's some useful things,
Aha.
like the whole
Yeah.
reason we're having this conversation is so that people can like hopefully understand it a little bit more, but then do something about it,
Sure.
especially maybe men who are stereotypically like fixers. So
Yeah.
what's some useful stuff around toxic masculinity?
Yeah. I think the first thing you have to do is just process your past experience with toxic masculinity, and just kind of see where it comes from, where the roots of it are in your life. Like it could have been just the message you were fed as a child from just watching your dad, grandpa, uncle, whoever it may be, and then kind of taking ownership of how you've perpetuated this belief in yourself, and just seeing the impact that it's had in your life. Because I think a lot of it can be very uncomfortable to let go of toxic masculinity because of the type of judgment you fear you're going to receive. Um, so I think it's important to process it, see the amount of pain that it's caused you and potentially people around you, and just get to the point where you're like, why am I hanging on to this so tightly? Um, yeah, and then from there, I mean, you can kind of dive into taking a look at what your personal values are. This is kind of one of my favorite things to do with clients, is just find out like what you value, and then looking at that, and like, because that just leads to, it helps decision making, it helps career choice, it helps just like, yeah, spouse choosing or partner choosing.
Mhm.
um yeah, and yeah, it also gives you a greater sense of self-identity. If you know what your values are, then you can almost make every decision based on that. Like something comes up
Mhm.
and you're like, oh no, it doesn't fit with my values, I'm going to say
It's
no
really
to it.
foundational. Like it's
Yeah.
almost like a springboard, like a really firm springboard to jump off of or to
Yep.
come back. Like it's a reference point.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. um and yeah, I think it's, so obviously, as if you're following this rigid view of how things should be, then you don't think that your needs are important, which means that you're not voicing them. So that's also something that's usually important with a client who's struggling with this, is helping them start to voice their wants and needs more, seeing that that's okay, but in a way that's obviously respectful of other people. You want to be respectful of their own wants and needs, and you
Mhm.
know have a
Mhm.
good dialogue.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just, yeah, I think the more and more you're able to be vulnerable, that's another point, is um, yeah, that's just going to help you out through the
Yeah.
process.
Pete, it's really kind of when I think about this, I get a little idealistic, and that's
Hmm.
just part of my personality. But I
Hmm.
have this like um, image in my head of like when people pursue health in their own lives,
Hmm.
that ends up just changing the system, that like even the smallest system that they're in.
Hmm.
So if you and I get more healthy, that shows up in our relationships with people, and often like other people in our lives, even though it might take some time
Yeah.
or some work, like they often actually improve in health as well. And then
Hmm.
they're impacting their sphere of influence. And I
Hmm.
actually get this really like idealistic picture in my mind that it's like, man, if people will pursue health,
Yeah.
if like, if men and women will come against like toxic masculinity,
Hmm.
if like all people will come against toxic masculinity, if we all like that in my mind, I can like
Hmm.
really easily picture it actually changing the world.
Yeah.
And I know that that is like a super idealistic, sentimental
Yeah.
picture, but I actually
Yeah.
believe it at my core. So
Yeah.
that's why I think that like these type of conversations, like the more anybody can know
Hmm.
just a little more and like grow into health a little bit more, the more that they impact their circles.
Yeah. Yeah. This might be a little off topic, but I was watching a video one time and they were talking about to this couple about why do you have children? They had like 4 kids or something like that. And they said that they viewed it as um, raising good humans, so that it's almost like you're like sending them out. If you raise good human, you send them out and then they can help other people be good humans. And so it's like, that's a very good reason.
I love that. That's really
Yeah.
great. Yeah, super great. All right, Pete, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for lending us your
Yeah.
perspective and even just like your knowledge of, like the studies that are out there and just like
Mm-hmm.
your participation already in the work that you do as a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I am very, very excited for your groups to come up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that I'm excited for. But thank
That's
you
going
so
to be
much for just
great.
taking time. I appreciate it.
Uh, Thank you. It was great. Thanks. Good chatting.
Bye, Pete.
Bye.